The dying days of the last remaining Gilligan's Island cast member exposed a devastating truth that had been hiding beneath the joy and brightness of one of the most cherished sitcoms on television. The saying goes that every island has its secrets, but few tales are as eerie as this one. Millions of people all over the globe recognize them as a timeless figure for many years, someone whose presence brightened American living rooms with happiness, innocence, and escape. But beneath the cheerful exterior and seemingly carefree demeanor, there lived a person whose life was incredibly complicated, precarious, and sad in the end. What takes place as the real person behind the character gradually disappears from view. As your personal tale comes to light, how can you bear the burden of being remembered for a part that shaped you? This is a tale of triumph and tragedy, renown and isolation. The stardom's glittering peaks and its heartbreaking, often overlooked valleys. A life that brought joy, yet ultimately remained unspoken about. The 1964 premiere of Gilligan's Island was a ray of sunshine in an otherwise dark decade. An uncomplicated comedy concerning 7 individuals left alone on an uninhabited island, compelled to work out their disagreements in the hopes of being rescued. One of these characters had a real-life counterpart whose name and likeness would remain entrenched in television history far longer than any of the others. They were well loved by the public at large as members of an ensemble cast that shot to fame overnight. Generations, and they were lauded for their endearing quirks and lasting camaraderie. However, a different picture emerges when the curtain behind the scenes is pulled back. This cast member found that fame is a fickle friend. It brings both adoration and isolation. The character stuck around even after the show went off the air, forever preserved. While the character was entertaining, the actor playing it had to deal with a harsh reality. Those closest to the individual remember them as lively and friendly, full of stories, but also as someone who carried a subtle melancholy that no one could put their finger on. During those times of joy on set, for sure, but also of annoyance, isolation, and dashed hopes. The weight of trying to rediscover one's purpose was heavy, and no subsequent parts could live up to the influence of that legendary character. A troubled spirit beset by dwindling stardom and the time's unforgiving light. In a world that wants to see only a certain side of you, how can you maintain your sense of self? When the lights go out, how do you continue on? The solutions were elusive, and the journey was frequently solitary. Health as time passed, problems, both bodily and mental, started to emerge. The actor withdrew from the industry that had praised them before and fought silently away from the spotlight. Time and hidden hardships took their toll, and loved ones could do little except watch. People remained in hospitals, murmured worries, and times of extreme exposure that the general population was never shown. Nobody envied the person who had to bear the weight of a legacy that wouldn't age. And yet, I am the last person standing, because I never gave up on my ambition to be remembered, not merely as a character, but as a person, their life's narrative. Outside of the spotlight and applause, the awful conclusion arrived slowly. Those closest to them felt a profound sense of loss, and viewers who had held on to fond memories of the show were taken aback. However, a tale that prompts contemplation lies concealed beneath the sadness, regarding celebrity and the emotional toll that comes with it. Despite the hardships they endure, how can we remember to celebrate the lives of people who bring us joy? As a community, what kind of fan duty do we have? Seeing the persons behind the roles. More than just a tale of sorrow, the terrible demise of the final Gilligan's Island cast member is worth telling. It reflects the ever-present need for empathy, the precariousness of fame, and the intricacy of human connection. Hard questions should be asked in light of their story. Some people were able to make us laugh, but how can we remember them? Do we have the capacity to comprehend them as complete human beings, with all of their pain and suffering included? What kind of impression do we hope to make after the credits roll? For the common people as well as the celebrities, the island was always more than a comedic setting, eventually. On and off screen, human stories unfolded on this stage, and there, in the stillness following the laughter, is a profound and tragic reality revealed. Shadows cast over every tale, and smiles brighten a hidden truth, and each tale a dying farewell. However, getting to that awful conclusion was no picnic. It started off with joy and anticipation, remembering when the actor or actress was young, optimistic, and full of potential. Theirs was the only world oyster, and their ticket to Gilligan's Island was golden. Behind the scenes and on set, the gang had a connection that went beyond just working together. As they hid from the pressures of stardom, they became a family. But even in those few instances of unity, tensions started to form. Typecasting imposed its demands. Apprehension over being confined to one function indefinitely. Very few invitations were extended for other initiatives. Doors that ought to have been opened stayed shut. The grins belied a subtle desperation, as remembered by friends and colleagues, desire for unfettered artistic expression that was never fully realized. A small dot. The health of the cast members started to deteriorate as time passed. Not only was there normal wear and tear of getting older, something more sinister was the adversary in this fight. Problems with mental health, long-term health, and the isolation that comes with being under the radar all contribute to this. An interview here and there, or a brief appearance at a convention or reunion, might bring them into the public eye. The real story, though, was one of perseverance in the face of insurmountable obstacles. Relatives remember spending time near patients' hospital beds, having the inner fortitude to get through another day. Friends talk about unreturned phone calls, invitations turned down, detachment from a world that adored them once, gradually. Isolation was severe. What had been a protective barrier, fame, now seemed like a prison. The actor or actress was known for their role. It was in a previous incarnation, though. A person who provided no comfort once filming ceased. They struggled with the seeming contradiction of being eternally youthful on film as their bodies and souls deteriorated. In a society that cherished youth and originality, the anguish of being invisible was acute and unfiltered. Even so, inside in their darkest hours, they exhibited glimpses of the lively individual they formerly were, the storyteller, the companion, and the soul that yearns for connection. A gradual withdrawal from public life characterized their last years. There will be no dramatic departure or grand farewell, rather a gradual fading away. Tragic events occurred during those moments. It was hard to turn a blind eye to the truth of their story. There was a cultural as well as a personal loss, a bygone age that had shaped the formative years of a whole generation. The knowledge that we frequently fail to perceive the complete humanity of those around us also spread with the news of their passing, who provide us with entertainment. We cling to the stories, the pictures, and the memories, but the real person may fade into oblivion. The novel pushes readers to probe further, to wonder what is really underneath the facade of fame and remembrance, rather of viewing the last cast member as merely a recognizable face from a popular program, but also as a real person with feelings like love, hope, pain, and dreams. It makes us question our approach to those whose lives are on display but whose suffering is hidden. Moreover, it begs the nagging question. Ultimately, what is the significance of being genuinely remembered? There is a rich tapestry of happiness and sadness, laughter and tears, triumph and tragedy that Gilligan's Island and its final remaining cast member have left behind. It serves as a poignant reminder that every character has a tale to tell, an emotionally charged tale that calls for empathy and understanding. We are urged to look past the island and the screen and into the core of a story that is just as human as any of our own, as we contemplate their life and its awful conclusion. When someone makes us laugh, what are we supposed to do for them? As human beings, how can we respect them? At the end of the film, as our memories of the island dwindle, what wisdom can we take away regarding the transience of fame, the weight of loss, and the delicate splendor of life? These unanswered issues force us to pay closer attention, dig deeper, and preserve these stories, not only for the legends, but for ourselves. Being noticed, remembered, and loved can be a challenging journey. Over time, the gap between one's public identity and their private life widened even further, an abyss of untold suffering and dwindling chances. Beneath the charming front that admirers adored, beyond the legendary role that had defined their career, the cast members struggled to find meaningful work. The casting directors failed to see the real person beneath the character. The frequency of convention and reunion invitations decreased, and when they did arrive, it was obvious that the room's once luminous spark had faded. A heavy veil of loneliness descended upon them, cutting them off from the lively world they had previously known. A safe haven for them became their families and close friends. However, the strain of years of fighting invisible demons showed in even those partnerships. Periods of melancholy and annoyance frequently accompanied moments of mirth, an intense inner conflict that unfolded behind the scenes. The emotional toll was already high before health problems began to creep in subtly but progressively. Something to keep in mind. Even the people who appear to be immortal in our memory will pass away at some point. But through it all, the cast member held on to a glimmer of optimism, a desire to be recognized as more than a museum artifact, but as a real human being with hopes, anxieties, and frailties. Many never really understood the tremendous loneliness that resulted from this conflict between public expectation and private reality. A sense of isolation shrouded in praise, fond memories, and devotion, yet unbroken by true human connection. Being adored by famous people is a paradox that is hardly spoken. Having millions of followers does not guarantee that you will always feel heard and supported. The narrative gradually builds to its tragic climax. In the end, there was a gradual deterioration and a diminishing presence, which left loved ones to deal with loss and wonder what could have been. Were once. Those latter years were particularly trying because being associated with one figure for the rest of time was stifling. It was a constant reminder that the world couldn't move on from a static picture from decades before, no matter how much happened. Struggles to recover one's individuality by venturing out from. Some people resisted approaching the island's coastlines. Not only from producers and casting directors, but also from fans who are hesitant to try anything new. Because of this vicious cycle, the actor's genuine character became buried behind his cherished caricature, and even his closest friends had trouble telling them apart. Those two. In private, one feels a yearning for the ordinary. For days without the show's accompanying flashbulbs and fanfare, while yet feeling profoundly, bittersweetly grateful for the happiness it offered to so many. The mental and emotional toll increased in tandem with the physical difficulties. Conversations that were once lively and full of optimism became more subdued and tainted with sadness and anger as chronic pain and loneliness sapped the vital force. From an otherwise vivacious spirit, like the tide going out from the shore, leaving behind only footprints in the sand, the cast members' decline was slow and steady, rather than a precipitous drop. Seashells and the cherished recollections held by their loved ones. The world looked on, reveling in the legacy but failing to understand the individual hardships that lay behind the surface. Perhaps the most incongruous aspect of this public joy and private anguish is the supreme paradox of celebrity. A poignant reminder that there is a human story behind every adored figure.